When we think about making a sound, we usually think of, I don't know, recording something or playing an instrument. But what if you could go way, way deeper? What if instead of just capturing a sound, you could invent the actual physics that make it exist in the first place? That is the wild idea we are diving into today.
Yeah, this question right here, this is the whole game. It's the key that unlocks some of the most mind-bending tools in all of sound design. So today, we're going to look at three incredible philosophies that don't just tweak sound, they build it from the ground up, right from its most basic physical DNA.
And believe it or not, this whole thing kicks off with a classic showdown from back in the 60s. On one side, you've got the East Coast way of thinking, the Moog philosophy. The best way to picture it is like a sculptor with a huge block of marble. You start with something big and complex, and you just chip away everything you don't want. It's all about subtraction. But then you have the West Coast, the Buchla philosophy, doing the complete opposite. They're not carving away. They're more like an architect, starting with a single brick and building something complex from scratch.
So let's start there with that second idea, the West Coast philosophy. We're talking about sculpting with electricity. But maybe a better word than sculpting is growing. Imagine taking a single tiny seed of a sound and just cultivating it, watching it blossom into something totally new and unpredictable. And this beautiful mess of wires and knobs, this is what that philosophy looks like in the real world. This is a modular synth, the kind of thing pioneered by the legendary Don Buchla. And you can tell just by looking at it, right? This thing isn't built to play a simple melody. No way. It's a laboratory. It's a playground for discovering sounds that literally nobody has ever heard before. So what's the actual idea here? Well, it's simple, but it's also kind of profound. You start with the purest, simplest sound imaginable, a basic sine wave. And from there, you just add. You add complexity. You bend it, you fold it, you twist it around until it just explodes into something incredibly rich and full of harmonics. You're not taking anything away. It's pure 100% creation. Okay, so how do you actually do that? Well, you need a very specific set of tools. You've got things called complex oscillators, which are amazing for creating these wild, metallic, bell-like tones. Then there are low-pass gates, which act kind of like sound in the real world. You know how a pluck gets darker as it fades away? They create these really natural, organic, decaying sounds. But the real heart of this whole thing, the absolute star of the show, is something called a wavefolder. Seriously, wavefolding is the heart of West Coast synthesis, and the name is actually super literal. Imagine taking a simple sound wave, like a piece of paper, and just folding it back on itself. Then you fold it again and again. Each fold adds a new crease, a new layer of complexity. And that's exactly what this does to the sound. It creates these amazingly rich harmonics out of thin air. It's the engine that drives this entire philosophy. So what does all this folding and modulating actually sound like? Well, you get this sonic fingerprint that is just unmistakable. It's metallic, yeah, it's plucky and percussive. It can be insanely complex, but somehow it also feels organic. It feels alive. And that's exactly why you find this sound all over the place in experimental music or with artists hunched over their giant modular rigs, pushing sound into brand new territory. Okay, so from growing sound with electricity, let's switch gears to our second philosophy. And this one asks a totally different question. What if you could become a digital luthier, an instrument builder, but instead of using wood and strings, your tools were pure mathematics? And that, my friends, is physical modeling. See, instead of just creating an abstract waveform, this method builds a virtual object inside the computer. The software is literally calculating the physics of how a guitar string vibrates, or how the skin of a drum ripples when you hit it, or even how air flows through a flute. You're not faking it, you're building a real instrument from a digital blueprint based on physics.
And it basically works in 3 steps. First up, you have the excitation. That's the thing that starts the sound. So a virtual finger plucking a string or a digital mallet hitting a bar. Then you have the resonator. This is the brainy part, a super complex algorithm that figures out how the rest of the instrument, the wooden body, for example, vibrates because of that initial pluck. And finally, you get control. And this is where it gets crazy, because you can change the material from, say, wood to glass, or tighten a string in real time.
And here's what that looks like in the real world. If you've ever used a tool like Ableton's Collision, you've used physical modeling. And here's the key thing to get. Collision isn't playing back a sample of a xylophone. It is a virtual xylophone. The code defines its physics. So you can go in there and change how hard the mallet is or what the bar is made of. You're literally designing the instrument as you play.
And this is what makes it so special. Think about a recorded sound, a sample. Every time you play it, it's the exact same recording. But a physically modeled sound, it's never the same twice. Just like a real guitar player never plucks the string in the exact same way, each note here has tiny, subtle differences. It makes the whole thing feel dynamic, expressive. It feels like it's living and breathing. All right, that brings us to our third and, honestly, maybe the most radical philosophy of them all. So if West Coast is about growing a sound and physical modeling is about building one, our last approach is about shattering a sound into a million pieces and reassembling it into something entirely new. Think of it as sonic pointillism. The art of tiny moments. I love that description because it perfectly captures what granular synthesis is all about. See, this technique, it's not really concerned with waveforms or physical properties like the others. It's all about tiny, microscopic slices of time. So here's the big idea. You take any sound, it could be your voice, a car horn, a piano chord, anything, and the computer slices it up into thousands of microscopic pieces. We call these grains, and each grain is just a tiny little snapshot, like a single atom of that original sound. And then the magic happens. You can take those atoms and stretch them, change their pitch, shuffle them around, and layer them into these huge evolving clouds of pure texture. And when I say tiny, I'm not kidding. A single one of these grains can be as short as 1 to 50 milliseconds. Just to give you some perspective, blinking your eye takes about 300 or 400 milliseconds. So yeah, we are talking about manipulating sound on a scale that is almost too small to imagine. And modern tools, like this one here, Granulator 3, do an amazing job of showing you exactly what's happening. That big waveform you see in the background, that's your original sound. And then the synth just scans through it, grabbing these tiny little grains, you can see it happening right there, and then it stitches them back together into something totally new. You're literally painting with little bits of audio. And you have all this incredible control over this grain cloud. For example, you can change the density, how many grains are playing at once, to go from a sparse little crackle to a massive wall of sound. You can change the position to scrub back and forth through the original sound. You can even tell it to randomize the pitch and volume of every single grain to create these beautiful, shimmering, chaotic textures. It's wild. Honestly, this technique is responsible for some of the most bizarre and beautiful sounds you can imagine. It's how sound designers create that impossibly smooth time-stretching effect, where you can slow a sound down so much it's almost frozen in time, but the pitch doesn't change. It's the secret sauce for those huge, atmospheric, ambient soundscapes, and all those cool, glitchy, stuttering effects you hear in electronic music. Okay, so there you have it. 3 completely different ways of building sound from the ground up. So how do they all stack up when you put them side by side? Let's just break it down really quick. You've got West Coast synthesis, which is all about wave folding to get those metallic, plucky, organic sounds you hear in experimental music. Then you have physical modeling, using math and digital waveguides to create super realistic and dynamic acoustic instruments. And finally, you have granular synthesis, which uses microsampling, shallowing sound into tiny pieces to create those amazing, evolving cloud-like textures for sound design and ambient music. And this is really the most important thing to remember. These aren't just different settings on a synth. They're fundamentally different ways of thinking about sound itself. There are 3 totally different starting points for creativity. Are you going to grow your sound from a single seed? Are you going to build it like an instrument? Or are you going to shatter it and reassemble it from dust? Each path is a completely unique way of designing the very physics of sound, which of course leaves us with one last really exciting question. Now that you know about these incredible tools that let you literally invent the physics of a sound, what new sounds are out there just waiting to be imagined? What are you going to create?